Hello and welcome to the 44th episode of the Pirate Rugby Pod. We've got a jam-packed show coming up today, covering the semi-finals of the URC, analysis of an eventful few days of Welsh rugby, Irish rugby, French rugby, all rugby really, and a brief look at the games coming up this weekend, plus much, much more.
If you're listening to the audio version of this pod, please give us a lovely 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and leave us a lovely comment. If you're nice, we always reply. You can find our socials in the Linktree link in the description box below, and you can find our Substack there as well to get our Friday newsletter and also our long read article every Sunday. This week we did an investigation into the issues that female rugby fans face when they try to buy merch. It is an interesting and eye-opening thing for us men who don't have to face half the issues. But now to introduce our guests. The presenters are the fantastic and insightful, and one of my favourite rugby pods, the Rugby Bits pod from South Africa. We have got Shaun and we have got Kooks. Gentlemen, welcome to our show.
Hi, it's so good to be on the show, and thank you so much for the invite. What a great time to be here.
Hi guys, thanks for having us. It's kind of weird being a guest on another podcast. We're so used to fighting to have guests here, so it's very, very cool to be on the other side of the mic, actually being being the guest.
Right on cue, we've had a third guest.
She say, you talk about making an entrance. He said he was gonna come in, and what a time, man.
Yeah, this is what happens when Thala's not driving podcasts. It just comes whenever he wants to. He thinks he's a rock star.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a diva.
Hello, we are live. Please do not swear. But welcome to the pod. Thank you for being here. You've joined at the perfect time. So, guys, tell us a bit more about the Rugby Bits pod for people who aren't aware. Most of our listenership is based outside of South Africa, so maybe are unfamiliar with you guys. How long has the pod been going now?
3 years, I think. Shaun, it's about 3 years. I think we started it in about 2021 during the Lions series, just before when Shaun. I mean, obviously, we weren't all mates before, and then Shaun just decided to send us all DMs on Twitter talking about if we would like to jump on in spaces together. I think Shaun and I did a few guest appearances in a different podcast, and that's where we sort of first got acquainted. And then obviously, everyone follows Talos for his tweets, when he's normally putting people on fraud watch. So I think we all got together from there, and then Shaun just decided that we're gonna go from spaces, and the spaces went quite well, and then I went from spaces to podcasts, and then I think 3 years later, I mean, I can't believe it's been 3 years. It's still going.
And you're not sick of each other. That's impressive.
Helps them
maybe you are.
cities.
Yeah. There's four of us, so we get to rotate it around. You'll find like there'll be like 3-4 weeks where Tyler's not in or Jared's still AWOL, but he'll get over it eventually and come back. It's just the nature of the beast.
I like the rotation.
There's talent, and then there's like the regular folk. So I think Shaun and I are more the regular folk, and then Kooks and Jared, they're the superstar talent, and they're the ones that are a bit more high maintenance, have to pay appearance fees, talk through their agents for them to appear on our pod.
Yeah, I shouldn't do away games. I mean, don't call me in week 3 of URC. Call me from Greece close to the playoffs.
And just so we understand everyone's bias before we begin, I'm wearing my bias this week. But Shaun and Kooks, you're both Sharks fans. Thala, where does your allegiances lie?
I am a Bulls fan.
There we go. Topical.
I was going to say born and bred, but that would be very inaccurate. I mean, so I'm from a region in the country called the Eastern Cape, and we don't really have a big sort of franchise team. We used to.
Eastern Cape Elephants?
Yeah, the Elephants, the Southern Kings, the team that you guys used to beat about 13 times a year in the old Pro 14. So, I basically found when I was quite young that if I wanted to support a team that would be actually playing top-level rugby, you'd have to support one of the teams that are in Super Rugby and URC now. So I think Kooks is basically from the same region as I am. And, you basically just pick and choose between the Stormers, Sharks, Bulls or Lions on a team you support.
I think that's how most of the regional fans in Wales operate, to be honest. But I'll get myself into trouble if I talk much more about that. So let's talk about our rugby moments of the week. So my rugby moment of the week was I took to Twitter on Friday or Saturday morning because my girlfriend asked me while I was watching Super Rugby, what even is a Brumbies? And I was like, shit, I don't know. I don't know what a Brumbies is. And so I tweeted that I didn't know what a Brumbies was. And all of Twitter picked up their phones to tell me that it was a type of wild horse. And I got like, my phone was going off all morning, people telling me what that was. So thank you to the people of Twitter. I will now never forget that a Brumby is a small horse from Australia, but not necessarily the part of Australia where Brumbies actually play their rugby. So that's my moment. Enda, what was yours?
Mine was a hit. Gary Ringrose, I think he's been out since March of this year, in around the Six Nations games around Paddy's Day. And that was his first start in the weekend against the Bulls. A tough game for Leinster, obviously, with the result, but I didn't think it was obvious that he's been out for that long. And I think it was a couple of minutes in, he made a massive hit on the man in the match, Hanekom. And it was just, welcome back to footy for him. And I'm looking forward to seeing him coming up against the Springboks in July. Who wants to go first up from our guests with their moment?
I'm going to go with Sam Davies. He incredible game. So the access game from the Pro D2 to get into the top 14. Grenoble went up against Montpellier, star-studded Montpellier, but I've heard Sam Davies. I saw a couple of guys on socials talking about him during the season, and I watched the game, and he was on fire. Not by no means the perfect game, but just really stood up, guided Grenoble around the game, put Montpellier under massive, massive pressure, and put probably one of the top not to be 50-22 kicks out there. It was unfortunately passed back into the half, but it was super accurate. So that's mine for the week.
That needs to be an Andrew Ford video, doesn't it, of 50-22s that weren't given, but nearly 100%. Were.
Yeah.
Kooks, how about you, mate?
My moment is actually from Loftus on Saturday. I was at the Bulls Leinster game, and then at the end of the game, because us Springbok fans remember having to listen to Zombie after we lost to Ireland in the World Cup quarterfinals, and us South Africans are a petty folk. So after the final whistle went, we had our own rendition of Zombies with the Cambries, but it's obviously throwing in the Rassie over there. So I think we are well in true form for the Test series coming up soon.
I nearly tweeted because Thomond for the second game, which obviously was played after, they played Zombie on the tannoy there, and I nearly tweeted like, "Hey, they're playing that South African song," but I chickened out of it.
There's going to be a big lawsuit one day, and I don't think South Africans are prepared for the Cranberries to just take everything from us.
We're going to keep Munster's song. Like eventually end up in Munster's face again. Like it's your guys' song originally.
It used to be nice and quiet and unique, and now we've stolen it. Like we haven't even. It's not even a team that's stolen it. It's just the whole country. Like it'll be playing at Cape Town Stadium. It'll play at Loftus. It'll play in Durban, Kings Park if you want. Like we've just taken it. We're like, oh, this is nice. Let's borrow it forever.
Awesome. Thala, do you have a moment?
Two. One was early in the game, in the Bulls Leinster game, the referee Sam Grove White calling Ron Okia and saying to him, "You can't complain about every call. Like you need to we can't continue like this. Basically, you need to just calm down." And then as James Ryan is coming in and trying to throw in a few quips, he said, "Don't start." Like there's no point in you starting. I love refs that sort of like that you can see their parenting styles through how they ref. So that was brilliant for me. The second moment was this tweet from Lester Kiewit, who's someone who actually I think he's a journalist actually, but big rugby fan from the Western Cape. And he sent this tweet saying, "Dear Glasgow Warriors, drop me a flight, a Loftus ticket, and a Warriors jersey, and I'll represent Glaswegians in Pretoria. I'm a provincialist. I'm a Western Province. I'm a Stormers fan. And along with everyone outside of the former Northern Transvaal, could never support the Bulls." And you know what? We need this hate in South Africa. Like we've had all of this like unity with chasing the sun and the Springboks. They used to go out the window. If your if your like rival is in a final or something, you need to actually hope that they lose mid-key. Like, I hate it when people are like, we need to support the Sharks. I don't want to support the Sharks when they're in the Challenge Cup final. No, man. You want bad things to happen for your rivals. So I was like, okay, real hate is back in South African rugby. This is a good sign for us.
I could not agree more. There was a lot of pressure in Wales for everyone to support the Ospreys against Munster, and I was like, I want Munster to win. I'm not sorry.
But Ringo, he's coming. I'm going to be sitting with him at the final, and he basically went on Twitter. He said, I bought a ticket to the final, so a Bulls fan will miss it.
See, this is what we need. This is what sport's all about. Okay, let's move on to some news then. So, Enda, big news that is out today is that the Ireland squad for the impending Test series against South Africa has been announced. Few notable misses. I've forgotten the word. What's the word? Few notable exemptions. Omissions. That's the one.
That's the one. That'll work. Yeah, so we know the Hugo King, he's going to be a big loss. He's going to be playing with the Irish Sevens. Probably some really big calls in terms of URC. You know, no Ross Byrne. I think that's very tough for him. He's been coming in for a lot of stick with his recent performances. So he's been dropped in favor of Sam Prendergast, who's literally like 20, 21 years old. Came through Leinster Academy. He was really good under 20s level for Ireland. And he is apparently the heir to the throne, to Johnny Sexton's throne. So he's been, you know, leapfrogged. He's leapfrogged ahead of Ross Byrne. Gavin Coombs, again, this is out for whatever reason, and Jameson Gibson Park is out injured. Some debuts as well potentially coming up. Jamie Osborne of Leinster's been thrown in there as well. Got Cormac Izuchuko from Ulster, fantastic player. Great to see him in. And yeah, Sam Prendergast is uncapped as well, so it's great to get those lads in there. But I'd love to get maybe, you know, a perspective from South Africa in terms of, if you guys seen a squad, what are your initial thoughts? Any surprises for you guys?
I think Gibson Park's the big one. I think with the injury, I mean, Thala leads the Gavin Coombs supporters club, so I'll leave that up to him. But not having Gibson Park, I think, especially in South Africa, I mean, I think this season has probably been Ireland's best player. He's been absolutely on fire, and I think coming down to South Africa, especially with Jack Crowley at 10, I think obviously we know he's gone through the Six Nations, but to come down here, you got to kick well against the Springboks, and that experience that he brings, I think. I mean, it does swing the Test series a little bit, because I think he's such a key player, probably Ireland's important player, especially coming to tour down here. So I think that's a massive loss for Ireland.
Yeah, and good news, I think, from a Connacht perspective as well, Caelan Blade, which he's made the squad as well. He's probably behind Craig Casey and Conor Murray still, but I think it's a great opportunity for him. He is a fantastic player. He's not, well, like, there isn't much chat about him on Twitter, etc., because he doesn't play for Munster or Leinster or Ulster. But he is a fantastic player. And if he gets a chance, I think he'll take it. But maybe we'll move on to maybe potentially a bigger story, which would be the Springboks team has been named. What are your any initial thoughts? Or, like, the big thing for me that stand out is that Hendrik says is starting at 10. I think that's really exciting. Did not see that coming. Are you guys surprised at that selection as well?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think it's probably the happiest we've seen, like, South African fans in after the first squad announcement in a long time. It's relatively happy. There's not a hell of a lot to moan about. Hendricks is probably the biggest talking point. There's number of reasons behind it. Obviously, Sanele Nohamba is not in the squad, and he's just been named URC Player of the Season. He held down the 10 jump at the Lions, and Hendricks was playing 12 for a while. So it was quite interesting there. But the truth is, there's a couple of 10s that we want to see, but there's only so many positions you can take, you know. So it's the first game of the season. I think Siamasuku will probably get a look in later, almost definitely will. But Hendricks is probably the biggest talking point in that side, in that manner. But the side's very nicely balanced. Like, there's a great list of experienced players next to inexperienced players. A couple of guys coming back that really need to make a statement. A couple of guys coming back that want to, like, prove that they belong there. And it's going to be good fun this weekend.
Yeah, I think Raspeti had that stat that Eben Etzebeth has one more cap than the whole Wales pack.
That's not actually accurate. He forgot the 7 caps that Henry Thomas got
Yep.
for England.
Welsh caps in for Wales, yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, but I mean, it shows obviously like obviously with Wales not having access to all of their overseas players as well, like, and where Wales are right now, there's that disparity. So I guess we could have had maybe a bit more experimentation, but it's obviously a good balance because it's good opportunities for the likes of Sasha Ngomazulu coming off the bench, and Edolf van der Merwe is going to be in the starting team. I think the forwards could have, I wouldn't have minded a Netling for Shea maybe starting, Andre Guventa being on the bench. But yeah, you don't want to just play a team of just 15 new people as well. So I think that's a good mix between the two. And I think the Hendricks selection is interesting. He's been involved in Springbok like squads and camps before. So he's clearly a player that the coaching staff have had their eye on. He has basically the same sort of build as a Handré Pollard, and he's quite big, he's quite imposing, he can defend his channel well, he kicks well, he can run with the ball as well. So the prototype is there, whereas maybe with the Masukus and the Noambers, they're maybe a bit more on the smaller side. So I think that's probably the reason why he gets first shot.
Sorry, go ahead, Kooks.
I think at the moment, Thala speaks about like in South Africa, like it's very positive at the moment. Like box relations now, like the drama's gone now, like it used to be. Like like previous box coaches could name the side. We would fight about 15 of the guys who were in that side. Now, like Rusty could have picked anyone at 10 and be like, you know what? We trust the process. We trust him with our whole heart.
You can pick Kooks at 10. No one would bat an eyelid.
You know what? Like, and we'll do it. And the best thing is, like, I always laugh. Like, Rusty's got he's probably as a box coach got the highest approval rating. Obviously, ups go back to back. But if we feel like we lose in the weekend, we'll be like, you know what? The World Cup's 4 years away. That's what we're building to. But I'm glad. But looking at the side, I'm glad there's a bit of experience in there. I think the last time when we played Wales in South Africa, when we basically made 22 changes, we lost the game. So I still think Wales is still a side that you're not going to go 15 new caps in there. I think also the Boks, we have this thing where we tend to start slow our first test of the year, especially in July. So it's nice that we'll still get guys like Eben, who hasn't played a game since the Challenge Cup final, and guys like that who probably still need to run, and Marks comes back, so that also helps as well. So there's still some guys that makes a comeback who think obviously that Kwagga hasn't played for a while, Fife hasn't played for a while, Jess hasn't played for a while, with their season probably ending about 2 weeks earlier. So those guys also need to head out. So at least when it comes to the first Irish test, at least we got 7 to 8 starters having gotten a run on the weekend. So I think I'm glad we found that balance of going experience and obviously some exciting youngsters in there.
Yeah, and just one more from me. I know we've touched on Ohamba, like obviously he's been named today URC Player of the Season. I did notice that Jared put out quite a controversial tweet. Maybe it's not too controversial, but I'd just love to get your guys' thoughts. He basically says that Ohamba is too small for international rugby at 10. Do you guys all agree with that statement, or what are your thoughts? Or do you think he's like the perfect bench option to have to maybe cover if there's a 7-1 or even a 6-2 split?
Yeah, I mean, you can't fight some of the stats. I mean, yeah, I think Angus also put out stats about Noamba's tackle success being about 50%. So obviously that's not ideal for a international 10. I think teams have gotten around that. The Springboks themselves had Alton Yankees, who I don't think his defense was ever like at 50%, but you could argue it wasn't as strong as other Flowers defenses, and we got around that. Like you can put your 10s at the wing and all that sort of stuff. So I don't think it's necessarily I think it's something that can be worked around. I think there's just Noamba 4 years ago would have probably moonwalked into the team because we had such a dearth of talent at 9 and 10, and him and pretty much every other scrum half and fly off who has a South African passport has just decided, we're actually quite good at rugby all at the same time, which has been quite inconvenient for him. So yeah, I would have loved for him to be in the squad. I think he's something different. And, as opposed to, there's maybe much of the sameness with, so for example, someone like Faf de Klerk and Morne van der Berg as 9s. I think with regards to 10s, Namba's been the more consistent, obviously, than Hendrickse, who's basically he's made him sit on the bench for most of the season, and Masuku came in late in the season. So I do feel bad for him. I think he could have got an opportunity, but yeah, again, like Cook said, at the moment with having a World Cup coach that's won 2 World Cups in a row, there's not too much you can really fight on. And I think my resolution until 2027 is I'm not going to get myself into sort of Twitter debates about things. I'm just going to be like, okay, and see what happens basically at the end.
That'll change. You'll lose 2 games and you'll be straight back in. Kooks, go ahead, man.
I just think he falls. There's a point in Jared's tweet where he mentions that unfortunately sometimes the form players don't just get in, and in South Africa we do have that ridiculous depth then where we just got 5, 6 come-offs who are in form, and we've got so many 10s coming up now. I mean, you have so many 10s to the point that I think half the country forgot Jordan Hendrickse did play 10 until before he got named in the side today. So I don't think it's the end of the road for him. I think it's still the first squad being named, and I think obviously his form's there. And I think we're more surprised because he can play 9 and 10, and then obviously we know if you're South African backline player, the best way to get in a box team is to play multiple positions. So I don't think this is the end of the road for him, but I definitely think, unfortunately, it's not everyone can play Test rugby. Unfortunately, the squad of 36, you can't get everyone in there.
Yeah, and he's only 25, as you said, like he's a young guy. He's plenty of time.
The thing is as Kooks, as you mentioned, and as everyone knows, like the 7-1s is a reality. If you're looking at South African benches, and that's probably the space that he's going to go at, because before the squads were announced, I thought to myself, like, is he in our 3 best 9s? No. Is he in our 3 best 10s? No. That was the gut feel, even though he's cooking. And then the other thing that I was thinking about was about the continuous change at 10. Like, we only have so many games because we're going to have Pollard and Libbok back soon for Ireland. And we're going to just it's going to be as normal. So how are we going to fit everyone in? And is there going to be too many changes to do for this period in time? So November's probably his target, maybe the Rugby Championship. But there's a hell of a lot of change if we bring him into the squad now, whether it's at 9 or 10. Like, there's a lot of guys, and it's just going to be continuously cycling around. It could be a bit bad for the Springboks.
So I'm going to come back to you, Shaun, as one of the Sharks fans on the call, to ask you about Fassi at 15, one of the most debated positions in the squad, with Willemse being out, and it looks like potentially Leroux could not be available with his concussion of the weekend. Is Fassi the next cab off the rank, or can you see maybe Sasha sliding in there to take that position, being most similar to Willemse, we'd say?
Yeah, so there's the one player that has to play well on Saturday, I personally feel, is Apulele Fassi. The weekend special has to show what he's got in Test rugby, because I almost feel like this could be that last chance for him to really, really have a go. He won caps early on and had a bit of issues with some things, and he admitted it himself. He's now back on form. He's a different 15 to Willemse. So it's going to be interesting. I would love him to really play well on Saturday and just cause chaos, just to cause chaos for the Springbok coaches and selectors about what they're going to do, how they're going to manage him and what they're going to do. He's an out and out 15, which is something that he's like, it's then him and Willie Leroux. Like, he's got to really fight into that. So will he take Willie Leroux's place in the future? Will he sit with Willemse? I don't know how that's going to work. But he's the one player that I think really the most pressure will be on. But if he hits it now, he could be in the squad in matchday 23s almost for the rest of the year. He's good enough to do that. He's got that vibe about him. He's got that eye for the attack and for what's going on. And Willie likes to link up with people and do stuff. Fassi likes to hit that. Like, he likes to hit that line and do it himself. So it's a different change of attack and a different avenue for the Springboks to look at.
Awesome. What else has happened this week then, mate?
Well, Mick, there has been a Welsh team announced, so I think we're way behind schedule, but let's definitely get your take on this. What are your thoughts on the overall squad? Can Wales cause an upset? Let's hear your controversial take.
It's one of the weirdest Wales squad announcements ever, where it was getting announced and people were like, "Oh yeah, that's today," and it was like, don't really want to see the team. If they want to put it off to like tomorrow or something, that would be fine. But no, announced it they did. And people just like, yeah, okay, like we know there's not players available. We've had a terrible Six Nations. So there's kind of not been that much debate about it. The big news is that he's put Grady at 12. So Grady has never played 12 in his life since he played, I think, schoolboy rugby. He had a really good 20 minutes there in against Italy when the game was already lost. So it's interesting that, you know, Nick Tompkins in the Six Nations passed more than any other inside centre in the competition. But in Grady, he's just gone back to this smashing 12, which is fine. I mean, we're coming up against Esterhazen, who is that as well. Dear Lendy's on the bench, he's that as well. Aki and Henshaw, you could say that. You could say, what's his name, plays for France. His name has slipped my mind, but Dante, thank you, is that as well. So it's a fair tactic. So I've not got necessarily a problem with Gatland going to that. It's just, you know, the first time that Jamie Roberts ever played 12 was against South Africa. Is my only like positive spin on that. Other than that, the only kind of other two things that I notice is that I'm really looking forward to seeing Tame Plumtree go up against Peter Steph-Tutoy. Peter Steph-Tutoy obviously being the best in the business. I'm looking forward to seeing Tame Plumtree, who's this up-and-coming guy with a lot of dog in him. I think he might learn a few lessons off Peter Steph-Tutoy, but I don't think he'll learn them lying down. So I think he'll be a better player for this game. And then just Ananasis Gus tweeted that Jordan Hendrickse is one of the youngest Springboks ever to make his debut and one of the youngest ever 10s to make his debut. And it caused me to look up Sam Costello's age, who's the incumbent Welsh 10. Sam Costello's less than 6 months older than Jordan Hendrickse, yet he is the only specialist 10 in the Wales squad. He is the only guy in Wales really competing for that jersey. And it just makes me just think about how much pressure this kid is under. And I think he's got all the talent. He's come through playing incredible at under-20s level. He came through with the Scarlets and ousted Reece Patchell within a year. And now he's on his own being Wales number 10. So I'm happy for him. He's my guy. He's one of my favourite players. I can't imagine the amount of pressure that's on his shoulders. He must feel it every day.
Huw, I want to chat about like the Mason Grady decision, because I'm so glad that you touched on Tompkins. I'm a big fan. I think one thing, forget about the passing. I think defensively he's pretty solid. Like he fights outside of his weight category, and you're going to need that. And I'm not saying Grady's poor on defense. I think the whole system is going to change. And with having a new 9, you know, like Tompkins is going to spread the ball wide. You've got exciting fullback and wings. That's where I think Wales see that they're going to get it. They're going to beat the Springboks on the edge, but now you're going to have to do it a phase later. Like, how's it going to work? Like, what do you reckon the plan is going to be?
I don't know, to be honest. Under Gatland, even when we were winning Grand Slams, we never had a brilliant attack. And Gatland said it himself in interviews. He said, we were never a team that were going to put 30, 40 points on you. It was always going to be narrow margins. It looks like Warren Ball is alive and well. I think defensively, to your point about defence, I think Owen Watkin is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting in defence. And I think Owen Watkin is only there because Joe Roberts from the Scarlets is injured and got injured against France. I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure how we're going to play. I think Liam Williams being back on the wing is huge. It's a big vote of confidence for Cam Winnett. It's Gatland saying, Cam, you are the guy, even though we've got this Lions fullback going back. But I'm sure Liam Williams will be helping Cam Winnett out a lot. But Grady, the thing about Mason Grady is he's one of those players, a bit like George North was, is you can't just throw him on the pitch and see what he does. He needs to be one of those players that you come up with a plan to bring into the game. You need to come up with set plays to get him onto the ball. You need to get the ball in his hands as much as possible because he's an athletic freak. So it remains to be seen, because we didn't see any hints of it in the Six Nations, to be honest.
All right, mate. Will we move on to some? We've got some URC action, I think, to discuss. Obviously, the big one and the first game up was Bulls v Leinster. Anybody want to go? Let's go to yourself, Cooks. Your overall thoughts on the game. Did you see this one coming?
No, I mean, obviously, I think with the Bulls losing Kurtley Arons and Kenan Moody, I think that was the big worry. And Leinster sending a stack side. And the funny thing with Leinster sending a stack side is half of them, well, most of them probably have not played a URC game in South Africa. Because, I mean, obviously, every time the last few times they've come here on tour, they've sort of come just in between the semi-finals of the Champions Cup. So most of the starters were in Ireland. But, I mean, I think the Bulls were fantastic on the weekend. I think a lot better than they were a week before against Benetton. Put an absolute, I think defense was probably where they wanted, because that was something that the Bulls are probably worried about, and I was worried about as well, especially the Leinster attack. But the Bulls are fantastic. They kicked 12. Willie Leroux was incredible. I think obviously watching him pick apart Jacques Nienaber's defense, a defense that he probably knows like the back of his hand from all the time he spent the Springboks. So the Bulls are fantastic. I mean, Cameron Hanekom was, I mean, that's a performance that probably put him in the race for the number 8 jersey against Ireland. But I think Evan Roos will probably get his chance to answer on the weekend. But yeah, I mean, for the Bulls, I think no one saw going to the weekend, the Bulls, a lot of people didn't see them making the final, never mind having a home final. So I think, I mean, Jake was, I mean, obviously beaming from ear to ear on Saturday. But Joe, I mean, what a performance from the Bulls.
Hala, from your point of view as a Bulls fan, you were there in the stadium. Just how was the experience for you?
Yeah, I wasn't at the stadium, unfortunately. Kooks is the superstar that gets flown to all of these games in my place. But yeah, I mean, I think similar sentiments that Kooks had. Like, I've been of the thought that Kurtley Arons is basically worth 10 points all on his own. So losing him, I was really uncertain, as obviously we have a much smaller margin of error. And, Devin Williams and Sergio Peterson, who played wing, are, they've been relative journeymen in their careers. They played obviously for multiple teams. I mean, Sergio's obviously had a lot more success, but someone like Devin Williams has played more on our Currie Cup level than has played in like URC or Super Rugby level. So it was a bit of like, okay, this could be a place to exploit for Leinster in some ways. And Leinster, I think, were doing that in some ways early in the game with some of their bodyguards for the kick receipts and everything. But yeah, the Bulls found a way around that, and that's what I commend them for. They didn't really lose their heads where, Leinster, when Leinster got opportunities and they scored, the Bulls didn't really lose their heads and go away from the game plan when they felt like decisions were being made against them. They didn't really lose their heads, which was really important. And they really just grew into the game. Like, where it started a bit even, like as the game went on and on and on, it was clear that the Bulls are the ones putting the pressure on Leinster. And be it the altitude, be it just the uncompromising defense and the physicality, be it the kicking game, Leinster really got quite little from near the end of the game. So yeah, I think the main thing for the Bulls to take away from that game is when just putting that sort of physical effort really obviously gives you an opportunity to win these games. Having obviously the scrum that was just chowing, Porter and Furlong is a big help as well. But they stuck to a plan and they executed really well. And when you do that and you put pressure on the opposition, and especially when you're playing at altitude and you're forcing a team like, even a team as good as Leinster, but when Leinster has to, even a team like Leinster, if they have to play a lot of their rugby from their own half or kick from their own half in order to get any sort of ascendancy, like you've got that. So Glasgow will be a different challenge because Glasgow does not mind running it back. So that will be now sort of the configuration as to with the kicking game. The Bulls have been more willing to kick. I think they're near the top 4 kick stats in the URC, whereas Glasgow's near the bottom. They kick, They don't kick. So that'll be an interesting battle on Saturday.
And talk to me about your emotions as a fan watching that 25 phase defensive set. I was like ripping myself apart just watching it, and I'm not even a Bulls fan. Let's be honest, we haven't seen anything like that from the Bulls all season.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because we were on the other side of that when Munster played at Loftus, where the Bulls were the ones trying to go for the last minute try. They're going phase by phase in the middle of the field and they were going absolutely nowhere. And Munster just fronted up and, obviously got the win. And yeah, like with a moment like that, that's basically, I mean, I've watched enough rugby games to know that's the winning and losing of that game. So is someone going to make a mistake? Is someone going to get tired? But yeah, that's when your friend the altitude can come into the play for the Bulls, because you could see with Leinster, they needed someone of one of their star players to try and make a break out of nothing, because structure was lost. There wasn't really any like the Leinster Island structure wasn't really happening in attack. It was at some point just pass it to James Lowe, let him figure something out. There wasn't a Jamson Gibson Park to worry about. So as I think once it got past sort of that, in some ways, once it got past sort of that sixth, seventh phase, that's when I was like, oh, okay, I think we've actually got them. Like, as long as, a James Lowe doesn't do something ridiculous, which they can do, of course, it wasn't going to be the Bulls' defensive system was containing this and containing the Leinster attack, because it forced Leinster to get out of their structure and out of their patterns. And obviously the mistake would come.
So, Shaun, obviously there's no Bulls in the Springboks squad at the moment, apart from that one that they called up, which, based on the weekend that we just seen, excuse me, which Bulls do you think have to come in? Because other than Willie LaRue, there's no current Springboks in that Bulls team, really.
So Cameron Honeycomb's definitely got to get a look in. It's controversial, but I think Johan Goosen, and I know I spoke about rotating the 10s, but Johan Goosen's been playing really well this season. But, that's very controversial. Like, that's going to upset all those people we said wouldn't be upset. They'll be upset when Goosen comes back. But you can't say he doesn't deserve it. I think Wilco Lowe deserves a look in again. He's really been doing so well. And Johan Grobler, he simply has to come back for me. I can't remember. Thala, you can help me. I don't know how many appearances he's made already. I think he's only made one or two. But he's got to come back because we need that other hooker, and I think he would probably be the best shot, and then Fenter can fight him for it.
What about Elric Lowe? He has been absolutely insane this season. Thala, every time I do the stats every week, he's always top carrier, top tackler. He's the South African Gavin Coombs, if you like.
No, I think we are trying to find the next Peter Steph du Toit. I think Elric Lowe is more of a Jean Smith than a Peter Steph du Toit. Just his work rate and his ability to impact the games in many ways. That's just the way that he does that. And look, there's a long list. It's like a list going into a popular club, that loose forward factory doesn't stop producing. So I wouldn't be surprised if Elric Lowe doesn't get more than a cap or two during the course of the season. But someone who could get quite a few caps is Karel Steenkamp. That's just the one player I wanted to mention. So we have a bit of a loose head vacuum with Steven Kitsoff being out at least for the next few weeks. So in the Island series, there's an opportunity there for Steenkamp to be that reserve loose head. Obviously, there's props like Thomas du Toit and Trevor Nyakane that can play both sides. But yeah, I think Steenkamp has more than deserved his chance to play at loose head. He's scrummed really well. He wasn't actually, or at least in my very untrained eye, I was a flag, so I was just scrumming on the side. I didn't do too much. But he wasn't that good of a scrummager 2 years ago. Then we had a bit of an injury crisis in 2022 or 2023, and the Springboks picked him for the rugby championship squads. It seemed like he spent about 3 afternoons with Don Human, and he just became a great scrummager overnight. So yeah, shout out to Don Human again. But yeah, he's been really good since joining that squad. He's been really consistent. He's played a big part for the Bulls. So he would probably be, apart from obviously, like you mentioned, the Willie LaRue's, the Orances, and the Moody's, I think he probably has, surprisingly, probably the best chance to play the most minutes from the Bull squad in the Springboks this season.
Well, going from a team that has back three aside, not that many established internationals in it, but going to Leinster, who are the polar opposite of that, Enda, every time Leinster lose this season, we've come on this pod and you've said, oh, they'll be back. You know, they're still a good team. There's no need to panic. And now it's no trophies in 3 years, no trophies at 6 attempts. Yes, they're getting to finals. Yes, they're getting to semi-finals. But it's a trend now. Are you on the side that now you think something has to change?
Yeah, I knew this question was coming. So yeah, they've lost 3 Champions Cup finals in a row, and now they've lost 3 URC semi-finals in a row. Yeah, look, I think what I will say is that I think Leinster are still in a great spot. Like, you look at that team; they're all Irish internationals virtually. Like, they're in a really good state. They've a really good system. They've got young players coming through. They've got plenty of money. All that's good, but obviously, you know, when it comes to this crunch time at the end of the season, they're not producing, and that you have to admit that is an issue. It is something they have to address. They've got the best defensive coach probably in the world now, which everyone thought would be kind of the solution, because that was certainly something I think they needed to work on. Now they have, and now everyone's talking about their attack maybe falling short, which is, you know, a new issue. But I just still think the fundamentals are there. The players still there. I think Leo Cullen, I still think he's the man for the job. Apparently it's Jack Nienaber doing most of the coaching anyway. He's got a great team working alongside him. I just think that maybe, yeah, it's time to look at 10. I know I've been defending Ross Byrne because I think he gets an awful lot of, he does get abuse, but I think a lot of it's unwarranted. I think he's a solid 10. I don't think he gets, I think some of the abuse is a bit far-fetched and people go a bit too far with it. I think he's a solid option. He's not a running 10. He's a kicking 10. He's a good leader on the pitch, etc. But maybe that's the area that they need to look at. But there is Sam Prendergast coming through. Like, Leinster have a crazy amount of 10s on their roster. They've got a player like Kieran Frawley, who's a fantastic player as well. Like, it's very easy to say, yeah, look, maybe they should just replace the 10. I don't know. It's just maybe my suggestion, but I still think, yeah, Leinster still in the top 3 sides in the world. It's basically the Irish team. They are going to be back next season. They'll probably lose another final next year. They'll probably lose another same final. But like, I don't think it's like some people are suggesting as well. Maybe it's an away form thing. Like, they're used to playing the Aviva, or they're used to playing the RDS, and then when they leave, you know, those grounds and they play against a tough side away from home, that they struggle. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But overall, I think there's fundamental absolutely there. They'll be thereabouts next season. But something is going wrong, clearly, when it comes to this crunch time. And like you said, I know, Cooks, you touched on it. Like, that was Dan Sheehan's first game in South Africa, which I think is absolutely crazy. Like, he's a nailed on starter for Ireland. And I think it's Leinster's fault as well. And maybe it's a decision based. Like, they shouldn't have been playing away from home. They're too good, I think, to have been playing away from home at altitude away to the Bulls, because they, you know, but we all know why they end up there. It's because they put weakened sides out when Leinster were focusing on Europe. And you'd think they'd learn from that last season with the semi-final loss against Munster when they put out a weakened side, and they clearly didn't learn from that. And this is potentially a mistake for that. I don't know, but it maybe just comes down to selection. Maybe they need to take the URC more seriously at times. So
I think even if the not losing the games doesn't ring alarm bells, Munster finished above them on the log. That in Leinsterdom, that should ring alarm bells. That should be panic stations, surely. You know, and it's frustrating for me because I'm supposed to be the stats guy, but every time I talk about Leinster, I just become a passion merchant. They didn't want it enough and things, which isn't like insightful analysis. But what I will say is, and Jim Hamilton mentioned this on the Rugby Pod, like, if you take that, like 80% of that Leinster team is the Ireland team. So they started this season trying to win the World Cup, and then that didn't happen. And then they tried to become the first team ever to win back-to-back Grand Slams, and then that didn't happen. And then they tried to go level with Toulouse with 5 Champions Cups, and then that didn't happen. And then this was like their 4th prize. This isn't even a bronze medal for them. Whereas the Bulls, Jake White has made it very clear from the beginning of the season that he is here to win the URC, and that's his goal this season. And I got the sense from the Bulls, even from the away game earlier in the season when they went up there, fully loaded, that they have, like the song suggests, Leinster have been in their heads. And I feel like Jake White and those Bull players have been going to sleep for the last 3 months thinking about Leinster, knowing this game one way or another was coming. And I just don't think Leinster have been doing that. And like I say, when I do Leinster's stats every week, there's never like a Cameron Hanekom or a Gavin Coombs or a Morgan Morris for the Ospreys. There's never one player who stands out and he's like, he's their guy. It's all really good stats across the board, but there's never one guy who's like, I'm going to take this game by the scruff of the neck. And I just feel that Leinster, you're going to get a 9.5 out of 10 every week, but you're never going to get an 11. And that's not science. But the Bulls managed to go to 11 at the weekend. So does anybody else have any thoughts on Leinster from an outside point of view?
It's very interesting that you say that, like, because they always share the load. That's the way they are. It's something that I spoke about when we were recording yesterday was like Byrne, he's a really good 10. And if you are 3 points ahead, he's the right 10 to have. Like, he will go through the motions, just play in those spaces, do what he needs to do, kick where he needs to kick. But if you're 5 points down, he's not the right 10 to have. And Leinster, with Sexton, have had that. They've had both of them because, like, if we're honest with ourselves, like, Sexton's a really good player, good attacker. The amount of times the Sexton loop was coming, we knew it was coming, and he still did something with it. Like, that's on him, you know. And they're bringing in a 10 that's going to get them from 5 points down to a win. That'll be in 2 or 3 years' time. There's going to be a couple losses along the way, so you might need that one guy that really elevates himself to give you that 11 out of 10 more regularly.
I agree a little bit with mostly with Enda when he says, like, yes, Leinster's a good outfit, they're still fine, they'll come back next season. I think what people tend to forget is Shaun and Enda, for example, came in it missed probably preseason because it was during the World Cup, and then he had a trophy tour to do. Then he sort of came in the middle, like when the season already started. So there's quite a few changes, and there's a few staff leaving as well. There was a bit of chaos happening in Leinster this season. So I think that, like, that they speak about the attack, and the attack has gotten. And the attack has gotten some criticism, but I think it does take time to get put together. And obviously, you're losing someone like Sexton. I know there's a new attack coach coming in. I think it's Thala from the Canes. But I do think that a good preseason is going to change life for them. I think obviously they'll have the internationals. Obviously, even them say won't play the first few games, but at least will be involved, hopefully, a little bit in preseason, and hopefully Shaun and Enda has months now to sort of sit down and work out the plan, and the new coaches come in, they've got time to get in the off season to work out what's going to happen next season, because I don't think Leinster's far away. I think that's the frustrating part for them, is that they're not far away, but it's always one or two things, or it's a side pulling out an incredible performance to beat them, where, and unfortunately for them, whenever they turn up to a semi-final or final, especially the URC, where they're the benchmark and teams see them as the benchmark. So if they, like you said, Huw, are going to come in with a bit of 9.5, they're gonna fall short in these games, because unless they start, like you said, I still think they need to start sending stronger sides on tour, whether it's they play 1 week and some guys leave the next week, or I think just because teams now, I mean, like, look at the Bulls. I mean, like you said, they're the benchmark. So if you're the benchmark and everyone's trying to beat Leinster, and the competition's getting stronger as well each year, teams are getting stronger each year. So they can't keep on thinking they can just sort of flow the way through, and we'll get a home final, home semi, home final, and hopefully we can get the job done. So I just think this is a massive preseason for them and a massive off season for them. I think the time Jacques spends with the guys, I still think they'll be in the running next season.
Last thing I'll say on Leinster is I'm going to read you out a team sheet for Leinster now. So this team sheet is Jordan Lama, Hugo Keenan, Gary Ringrose, Robbie Henshaw, James Lowe, Ross Byrne, Jameson Gibson Park, Jack Conan, Josh Van der Fleer, Caelan Doris, James Ryan, Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, Cian Healy, Devin Toner. That is the 15 that started the 2020 Pro 14 final. And to me, the similarity, the level of match between that and the team that they played against the Bulls is too high. We like stability, we like cohesion, but I am not seeing there a team that is asking, how do we get that last 1 or 2%? To me, that's a team that is comfortable. So maybe we are now seeing why they felt the need to go and get a Geordie Barrett, and why we might see more players like that come in the future. Has someone in that environment, maybe Jacques gone in there and gone, we need to shake things up, because guys, we're sitting down in our slippers here, and we're not pushing the envelope. Go ahead, Shaun.
The Leinster are everyone's cup final as well, and what happened in the past is that there was the occasional win against them, and now, as Cook said, everyone's getting stronger. Like this stuff's changed, like the landscape has changed. So Leinster's still everyone's cup final, except they've got more guns. They're bringing more guns to the war, and they're just not able to deal with it. But Huw, I think you bang on with what you said there.
So we had the other semi-final as well then that we need to talk about, Enda. Munster, top of the log. We said it when we had Cian on the pod, shout out Cian. He said, the woe is coming. The woe always comes for Munster in the end. And it happened.
Yeah, very disappointing. Did not see this coming out of the bookies, which always makes you feel better with your predictions when you get it horribly wrong. Yeah, very surprised. I thought Glasgow, though, full credit to them. They showed up with a plan and they executed it well, and they were fully deserved winners, I think. Like, it's really disappointing, I think, from it overall. I'm also one of those fans that you all mentioned that you hate. I'm one of those fans who, number one, I support Connacht, but I love supporting any of the Irish provinces unless they're playing against Connacht. And yeah, so from my perspective, I was really disappointed with the weekend, obviously. I don't think, though, that Munster are in a bad place. I think they're definitely in a good place going forward. Again, like Leinster, I don't think there are any fundamental issues there, or especially in terms of personnel. I think they have good players coming through, and they have good players coming in next season as well. But yeah, I think full credit to Glasgow for me. They showed up, and from a URC perspective, as Kooks mentioned, this competition is getting so much better, and I think it's, from a league perspective, it's phenomenal to have a Bulls v Glasgow final, because nobody, I don't think, would have predicted this. Although, Huw, I know you did say at the beginning of the season that you backed the Bulls to go the full way.
I did. I've got video evidence. I'm going to tweet it after the final.
I'm going to delete all of that. But yeah, I think it's great from a term perspective. I think it's going to be, we'll touch on the game coming up in the weekend, but it's going to be tough for them down in Pretoria. But yeah, interesting to get your guys' take. Maybe starting off with yourself, Shaun. What were your thoughts on this game? Were you surprised as well?
I thought the Warriors were going to bring it in the beginning. I just expected more from Munster. I thought we've seen them absorb a little bit and then get on top, and then just get stuck in and then move forward and get going. And there was times and there were moments in that game where they had it, but like Glasgow weren't going away. And Glasgow, the kind of side that there's so many of those sides in the URC that if they've got a sniff with 30 minutes to go, then you're in deep trouble. And they just kept at it. They played with a different belief, and just really, it almost looked like they just absolutely snuffed out the Munster fire big time.
And Thala, from a Glasgow point of view, you alluded to their stats earlier, that they're quite an unusual team. They're a successful team that don't kick very much. What kind of threats are you seeing from a Bulls fan's point of view? What makes you worried about the Warriors?
All of it. Yeah, like even with the game on like a month or so ago when the Bulls won 40 points to 34 at Loftus, the thing with Glasgow is, number one, just that, I mean, with everyone sort of playing almost copycat rugby in some ways, a team that's willing to just run the ball back becomes just such a different thing to plan around, because it's something that's so different to what is expected from everyone. And especially with someone like Carl Rowe at fullback, he has no problems with, I'm just going to get the ball up and run it myself. I'll connect with Carl Steyn or with Cancelier and get them going in the counter-attack. And I think with Glasgow, it's not like they have, I wouldn't say they have like a superb like set piece. I think their set piece is near the top, not necessarily like would scare anyone off, but they have obviously quality in their tight five and their loose trio. Their defense, I think, has been quite good, as we saw it on Saturday, but I don't think it's necessarily like absolutely special. But yeah, I think the attacking threat is one thing. The willingness to run the ball and to not kick is, I mean, that's going to be an interesting tactic in the Highveld. But luckily, because it's a bit of an evening game, at least you're not putting in altitude and heat. It's now just the altitude that you're dealing with. So you're having a bit of a cooler condition. And I think teams can learn from what Munster's approach was in trying to control the pace of the game and just making sure that your players have as much time as possible to rest. But the other thing is the breakdown threats that Glasgow had were just amazing on Saturday. I mean, Rory Dodge was great, and then Rory Dodge's twin, Tom Jordan, was also amazing, just getting turnovers and fly off as well. So I think it really just for Munster, they got so ponderous in playing a lot of rugby in between the 10-meter lines, and they got absolutely nowhere with that. And once Glasgow absorbed that, they took their opportunities with, the intercepts, the counter-attack tries and everything. That's when they were able to pull away. But even the week before with the Stormers game, I think what Glasgow did well in that game was when they seem to have just a great sort of like red zone efficiency. Huw, you probably know the stats better than me, but it seems like their red zone efficiency is great in attack, and in defense they give relatively little there as well. And they were just able to absorb, and then when the chances come for them, they can just pile on points really quickly. And unfortunately, the Bulls have had this one nagging weakness that they have like a 20-minute period where they just press the snooze button and don't play rugby and allow teams to come back at them. And didn't really happen at Leinster because the Benetton game was an 80-minute performance of them being on the snooze button. So we'll see. I think there's a lot of threats, and the one thing that you don't want to be as a South African team is the favorite, because we don't really like Munster. I think Munster is built on spite and hate and trying to get back at people and adversity, and South African teams are very similar. So yeah, that does concern me when there is not substantive, but I think there is a decent, there's a 10% favorite tag that the Bulls have ahead of Glasgow for the weekend, if not more.
Well, the other thing to consider about the final is everyone has been complaining about the travel that all the European or Scottish fans are going to have to do. Now, we tweeted about this at the weekend, and it started off with a lot of people having a lot of strong opinions. But normally on Twitter, the bigger a tweet goes, the more crazies you get. But weirdly, with this tweet, like the bigger it got, the more people just started replying, like, just leave a gap. Well, 1 week gap between the semi-final and the final. Give people time to plan and get it sorted out, and it's all okay. So that kind of de-escalated that quite spicy topic, which is a shame. But it did give me an idea for a game. So this is called The Drive is Right. So the way that this game works is people in the UK don't realise that we're born, and we don't realise that pretty much everywhere is an hour's drive from wherever we are. So what I've got is the distance between some famous rugby rivalries around the world, and I'm going to get you guys to guess how many hours of driving it takes to get between these. So everyone needs to come off mute, and this is Price is Right style. So you all name a time in hours it takes to drive between these two places, and whoever's closest wins. Okay, so Enda, you're going to go first. I'm going to go counterclockwise on my screen, and the first rivalry that I'm going to do is I'm going to do a favourable one for our guests, and I'm going to do between Cape Town and Pretoria. So this is all according to Google, by the way. So if someone's like, I did it once and it took me half an hour longer than that, unlucky. So, Enda, Cape Town, Pretoria, how many hours of driving?
12.
So we've got 12 from Enda. Shaun?
Yeah, I'm going to go
12. No, you can't go the same.
All right. 13.
13. Kooks?
I think it's about 15.
And Thala?
Yeah, because it's Pretoria, not Johannesburg, it's actually, I think, closer to 17.
Well, according to Google, the answer is 14.
Ah, lies.
Only one left open.
So I think Shaun got that one.
Nah, don't know.
Yeah,
Let's say you did. Check the tapes later. Okay, next one. Where should we go? Right, next one, we're going to go Auckland to Canterbury. Hours of driving. Shaun, what are you saying?
I have no idea. 7.
Interesting. Kooks?
It's been a while since I've looked at the Kiwi map. So,
I don't know if they're both in the same place.
Yeah, I'd say about I'll say 6.
Thala.
How does it work with the North and South Island? Do you get on a ferry and then the car gets transported there? Yeah, like genuinely, what's the logistics with going from North to South Island? Is there a road?
You can't ask these questions.
I-
That's
okay.
illegal.
I'm just I
No
don't know.
questions
Maybe.
allowed.
Damn. Okay. Let's go with 8.
Okay, and Enda, what are you going?
5.
You're all miles off. It's 18 hours
Oh.
to go from Auckland to Canterbury. So I think, who said 7? 7 won that.
I think I said 7. How did I win that?
Well, I said
Forget
8,
it.
so I see my.
No. Yeah, Thala went 8. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm bad at being quizmaster, I should say. I always fail. Okay, next, where are we going? We're going to go to... Right, so the longest away day in the English Premiership is Exeter to Newcastle. How many hours? Thala.
Is it about 9?
Okay, I'm going 9 for Thala. Enda?
7.
Shaun?
10.
And Kooks.
I don't know. I'm gonna go low and say 4.
The answer is 7. So Enda gets that one.
Oh.
Shaun, there's nowhere in the UK that takes 10 hours to drive. And it's just not that big of a place. It's just not that big of a place.
I saw your face when I said 10. I was like, oh, damn it.
Oh, see, I'm not a good quizmaster. Okay, Enda, back to you. So the newest team in MLR this season, one of the newest teams, is Miami Sharks. Their nearest team is New Orleans.
Oh.
How many hours from Miami to New Orleans?
Wow. I've actually driven before from New Orleans to New York, and that took 24 hours with three other people. So I'm gonna go 16.
16. Shaun?
21.
Brooks?
I'm gonna go 23.
And Thala?
I'll go 12 just to cover the lower part.
Thala, you're spot on. 12 hours Miami to New Orleans. Not as big as people
Nailed
thought.
it.
And then last one. The biggest rivalry in Wales is between Scarlets in Llanelli and the Ospreys in Swansea. How many hours? Thala?
2?
Enda?
1.
Shaun?
45 minutes. Ooh.
Brooks?
Oof, I'll say 4.
So
Shaun's gonna
the driving time between Llanelli and Swansea in Wales is half an hour. So Shaun, you get that one. It is actually walkable. Some fans do sometimes just walk.
Wow. Wow.
That's wild.
Yeah.
No one walks from Cape Town to Pretoria
That's-
for North-South Derby. I'll tell you that much.
So this is the point that I'm making is people in the UK complaining about travel times. Chill out. Right. Let's move on to some rugby around the world, and we'll start with Super Rugby. So we know our finalists. It's going to be the Blues against the Chiefs. The Chiefs getting a bit of an upset win away against the Hurricanes. I know you South African guys are still watching Super Rugby closely, seeing what your exes are doing. So what are we feeling ahead of this final? Who's your favourites? Who's your favourites? Thala, who's your favourite?
No, yeah, it's so funny, especially that first season when we were separated. There was so much hate watching. It really reminded me of like a high school breakup. We're like, look at this stupid competition. They're so crap without us. Haha, and all that sort of stuff. I was like, this is so high school. But yeah, I think the Blues have been the more consistent side, but yeah, man, the Blues are gonna blue in a Super Rugby final. So I think I'll give it to the Chiefs. And I think with there's something with the Chiefs that's working quite well. With number one, I think obviously we know Takiao has been a great All Black hooker the last few years. I think he's been leading the front row quite well. So I'm a Penny Finau and Wallace's TT have been just playing great right now. And I think Finau is probably going to be the future at blindside flank for the All Blacks. And I think the Blues have a great pack, but them sort of doing that business in the tight will give the opportunity for the Chiefs backs to do their thing. So I think there'll be another blue day for the Blues on Saturday.
Should you go with that?
Yeah, I mean, man, I do love seeing the Blues choke another final, especially when they do it at home. It's one of my favorite sites in rugby. But I think this could be the year they actually win it. I mean, I think obviously I see Eden Park. I think Eden Park sold out this weekend, and they've been good. They've been the most consistent side. They've had a good season, and I think obviously there's a lot of hurt there from our previous finals losses. I think probably maybe Crusaders was the side holding them back. That was the hump that was holding them back. But yeah, I think eventually they've got to win one eventually. So I think this is the year, and and hopefully they become a Super Rugby Fight Club champions, as I call the competition these days.
Trust the Blues to crumble when the Crusaders aren't there, but I think the Blues take it. I think their backline looks fire, but there's obviously a lot of backline love, and Super Rugby is all about the attacking, so it should be fun. But I reckon the Blues take it. I am really looking forward to, I know it's completely on point, but I'm really looking forward to Rico Ioane and Anton Leonard-Brown having a go at each other. I think everyone's missed Anton Leonard-Brown, and those injuries really hurt him. It would have been interesting to see how things unfolded for the All Blacks. If he was fit the whole way, it would have been interesting to see how they manage that situation. So they're going up against each other for the title, but it should be, there's a lot more at stake, I reckon.
Yeah. I have to say, watching the Blues this season has made me want to see them play against Northern Hemisphere opposition because of the way they play, so physical forward pack. I think they would be really well suited to playing Northern Hemisphere rugby. And I feel like I'm drafting already my apology tweet to Caleb Clark, who I completely wrote off and looks like he's been in the gym. Been in the gym. He looks like he's lost a few pounds, and I have to say he looks mean right now. Moving on. Sorry, go on.
July is coming. Don't draft it yet. Don't worry. Don't just keep it the way it is. July is coming, and it all will be normal. Come, Caleb Clark.
So, other competition that I know, Shaun and Thala, you guys have been watching closely is Top 14. We had the Barrages this weekend, Toulon against La Rochelle, Bordeaux against Racing. Shaun, Toulon played some of the worst rugby I've seen in ages in this game.
They not great. Like, I think Thala mentioned on our podcast, like for them to get 29 points is a little bit too much for the way they came out. And you know, they've went through a bit of a slump after the glory years, and they've put in a bit of a shot. They've like kind of cycled through a few players and coaches and owners and all that sort of jazz. But yeah, they were. I think the moment got a bit too big for them, and they were up against the La Rochelle side that are really like hunting a top 14 title. I know that's something that they are desperate to get. So. And it just worked out that they didn't pitch up at home against a really good La Rochelle side.
What was your take on it, Thala?
Yeah, I think you see the teams that have, a good structure, that they've built something and developed a culture, like we've seen with La Rochelle, obviously being European champions last 2 seasons. We've seen with Bordeaux, I think, with getting, the coaching staff that they have this season has been really good with Yannick Brew, Noel McNamara. I heard a bit of him speaking French at the start of the broadcast, and it was so hilarious hearing the French with an Irish accent. I think it was better French than Ron O'Gara's French, to be fair to him. You have Thibaut Giroux, who was also part of the French coaching staff as well, their fitness coach. So you see those people, you're like, okay, there's someone cooking here. Whereas with Racing, it's just bring in whichever superstar and then blame the superstar when they don't do well. Obviously, Jackie Lorenzetti is a persona non grata in South Africa right now for what he said about Siya Kolisi. So that's hilarious. But I think it's gonna be great semi-finals now. Obviously, Toulouse La Rochelle. We're gonna see if that sort of triangle relationship they have with Leicester fully reverses with La Rochelle beating Toulouse now. And yeah, with Bordeaux and Stade, I'm backing Bordeaux. Obviously, they have sort of artificial home ground advantage through the semifinals being in Bordeaux. And yeah, so I don't watch Top 14 every week, but when I do watch it, I find basically new loose forward to fall in love with. And this week it was Oscar Jegu for La Rochelle, and I'm just like, okay, this guy's going to play 40 times for France at least.
Going back to the Racing thing, so this is yet another year with tens of millions spent by Racing, and yet another year with no trophies to show for it. I mean, what do you make of what they're trying to do over there?
I think, I mean, it's very much Real Madrid, Galacticos, and I guess Toulon but with what Toulon did was that they bought, number one, players that weren't playing international rugby anymore. So players that could sort of stay in France, build a culture, learn the language, socialize together, and build some form of team spirit. And then their thing was, we've won everything around the world. We're going to build this team that's going to dominate France and Europe. Whereas with Racing, they sort of a bit hit and miss with their recruitment. They buy, active internationals like Sia Kolisi. They buy, the Owen Farrells. They get Gael Fickou back to Paris after he was at Toulouse. And it doesn't really match. And clearly there isn't that foundational pieces of players and a team that is building a culture. Then you add on sort of the superstars for to add that extra quality. And yeah, their seasons have just gone from like they get knocked out relatively early in the top 14 and they make a quarterfinal or whatever in the Champions Cup. And yeah, I mean, they've had even with their fly half, I mean, Gibert's been pretty good. I mean, a big improvement from the Scottish fly half that they had in previous seasons that Kooks loves a lot. It's an inside joke between us. But yeah, I mean, Farrell, the one thing about Owen Farrell is that he drives high standards. So that could go really well, really badly. Probably really badly because
croissants will no longer be allowed in the Racing canteen. And then then it's the end of days. It's the end of days.
I don't know if Sia goes, hey, I'm gonna go watch Wimbledon or something. The dirty look Owen Farrell's gonna throw at him. That might that will cause England South Africa relationships to go back a few hundred years.
Goodness.
So,
do you think Owen Farrell could actually get Sia Kolisi to say something negative? That would be just unbelievable.
That might be a breaking point.
Kooks, what's the reaction been like in South Africa to those comments about Sia? Surely you just don't say those things about Sia, surely.
No. Well, like, I mean, we're South Africans defending Eben Etzebeth without watching a single Toulon game or not knowing that he was injured. And we just saw him playing for us. We're like, it doesn't matter actually what he does in France. I think us as South Africa, I think we're just happy to see Sia on TV, whether it's in the French Open, whether it's a Formula One, and as long as he comes back to South Africa in one piece. But I mean, those comments are, I think, from a rugby perspective, it's a hard one because I think obviously the French sides have not gotten the best out of the millions and millions of euros that they've given African players. Like Eben, unfortunately, it's always got back injured, and the chair's not the same when he went to Toulon as opposed to Toulouse, where Toulouse probably was the reason that Colby became a Springbok. And I think with Racing, they wanted that sort of effect from Sia as well. I think it's hard when, I mean, and Shaun had the stats the other day, but that he has actually played quite a bit of rugby. So it's not like he hasn't played. I mean, he has, out of the loose forward, I think he's got the third most minutes, which was quite interesting. But unfortunately, those French owners have different standards for the internationals. But I think what Thala said in our pod, which was so true, if they want to get the Springbok players to come, because off season is so messed up. I mean, the Oaks don't get it off season. Either tell them you got to retire from international rugby, or just you've got to get Bok players or Springboks on in the fringes. I think someone like Sia, unfortunately, that will be the case, and I think they'll always get the after effects of that, because from here Sia's going to go play Test rugby now for the next 4 or 5 months, and then he's going to come back into the start of the season exhausted compared to someone else, compared to other players who will be fresh, and then he leaves again in November to go play Test rugby, and then you're sort of only going to you're hoping to get the best from him in Feb. So that, unfortunately, is the risk they're taking, and unfortunately, unless you're just going to let him go, but I can't see it changing anytime soon unless the calendar changes.
Jump in there, Shaun.
The just on those comments to Kolisi, South Africans, we're really weird. Like, if you look at Kevin Peterson, and when he left and was playing for England, everyone was like, all the South Africans were hating him. But the minute he retired and moved back to South Africa, if you said a bad word about him, like, may God help you. So that's kind of the same thing that's going on. Like, I went down a rabbit hole to go find some numbers just to see what his boss was talking about, and it was utter rubbish. I did actually completely forgot what I was going to say, but it's interesting how things work out. Like, what did Russing expect to get out of this? It's not like it's like Ducks who are looking for a high profile player to put themselves on the international map, for viewers. Like, it's Russing 92, like, do me a favor. So it's very interesting. Did they expect him to just tear up trees where he's playing like an extra 10 minutes a game to what he's normally playing with the Springboks, or what? I don't really know. And I think it was probably, it's definitely lashing out at the performance as a whole. But on the Owen Farrell thing, I think the two of them together will become a great team. And they really are good mates. But I think together in a team, I think that they're excited about the opportunity, and that will then force them and force the other guys to get in the groove and make a little bit of a better space. Saying that completely out of hope, but that's my take on it.
Fingers crossed. And what other competitions do we have going on around the world?
So what else do we have? We've got the Premiership Women's Rugby final coming up. But there was no action this weekend, but we did have MLR action. So the Free Jacks and Sabercats are still top after both winning. Emanano try and 6 points from Matt Gitto didn't stop San Diego losing to Chicago. Miami battered Anthem for their 5th win of their debut season. What else is going on, Huw?
The final of Super Rugby Americas. I'll be honest, I had high hopes for following Super Rugby Americas this season, but it's been dry as anything. So it was a final between the two Argentinian sides. Dogos beat Pampas. Congratulations. First year of following it, first year the Uruguayan team didn't win. I'll give you another chance next season, but if it's not good, you're fired. And then finally, there was a match between Canada women's development side and Spain, which Canada won by 1 point, which Canada arguably the best women's team in the world right now after winning Pac 4. Spain, probably the best European side outside of the Six Nations. They've got a game against Wales in a couple of weeks to determine who gets to play in WXV2. So that was an interesting one for fans of women rugby to keep an eye on. And then, Enda, how much rugby is on this weekend and how can people watch it?
So we've got MLR action coming up. We've got the URC final. If you're in the UK, you can only catch this on pay TV. Unfortunately, there will be no free-to-air coverage. There will be free-to-air coverage in Ireland. We've got the PWR final. We've got the top 14 semi-finals, Super Rugby final. South Africa playing Wales, Japan playing England, and the Babas are playing Fiji. We'll have the full guide out on Friday as always, so you can either catch it on Twitter or listen to our Friday morning breakfast pod. But I think that's pretty much it from me. I just want to say a massive thanks to all the lads for coming on. We usually try to stick the show to an hour, but Huw and I messaged each other about halfway through. We're like, we're never going to stick to an hour, but this is great. So we decided to keep going. So really appreciate you guys. You probably the guys didn't expect, like, we've been on the call for like 2 hours. So really appreciate you guys coming on. You absolutely box office. So really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Guys.
Really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
us. This is pretty much our podcast as well. We plan for an hour and then tell him when we get in trouble with his wife. Just go begin to bed too late, almost in supper. But thanks for having us, guys.
Our pleasure. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, reviews, do all the things. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.